Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's killed at least 50 Palestinians over the past day in Gaza as Israeli forces intensify their bombardment of Gaza City, blowing up entire city blocks. There are reports Israeli drones have struck near Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Al-Halu Hospital has also been shelled. Doctors and patients, including 12 premature babies, are trapped in the hospital. Doctors Without Borders says it's been forced to suspend activities in Gaza City. The group's emergency coordinator in Gaza, Jacob Granger, said, quote, "We've been left with no choice but to stop our activities as our clinics are encircled by Israeli forces," unquote. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians have fled Gaza City, but say there is nowhere safe to go. This is Rami Al-Hassi, who lost a leg in an Israeli attack. He spoke as he attempted to flee Gaza City on foot.
I'm walking from beach camp since yesterday, 6 a.m. I got the artificial leg recently and I can't walk for long. I arrived at 10 p.m. to another place. We slept outside in the desert and it was cold. I was heading south. Look at the situation. There were airstrikes from the quadcopter, shellings from tanks, from the ships also, and targeting all the houses. We didn't have any other options. We had to leave without clothes. We don't have blankets, clothes, or anything.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is meeting with President Trump at the White House today. It's his fourth trip there since Trump returned to office in January. They're expected to discuss a 21-point U.S. plan for ending the war on Gaza. One U.S. proposal calls for installing former British Prime Minister Tony Blair is the head of a transitional authority to rule Gaza. On Sunday, Netanyahu met in New York with White House envoy Steve Witkoff and President Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who once called Gaza's waterfront property, quote, very valuable, unquote. On Friday, Netanyahu addressed the United Nations and vowed to, quote, finish the job in Gaza.
But we're not done yet. The final elements, the final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible.
Netanyahu spoke to a largely empty room at the UN after over 100 diplomats from more than 50 countries walked out in protest. Thousands of people also protested Netanyahu outside the UN, with many calling for him to be arrested for war crimes. In Israel, hostage families also held protests. This is Einav Zangokar, whose son Matan has been held in Gaza for nearly 2 years.
I'm looking you in the eyes, Netanyahu. If you come back without an agreement, a hell awaits you here that you cannot even imagine. The protests and strikes of the past weeks will seem like child's play compared to what I'm preparing for you. If you sabotage the agreement again, we will chase you until the end of time. You will not have a single moment of peace.
The Trump administration revoked the visa for Colombian President Gustavo Petro after he joined a pro-Palestinian protest outside the United Nations in New York. During the protests, Petro called for an international force to end Israel's genocide. He also urged U.S. troops to disobey orders from President Trump.
The global force has to be bigger than that of the United States. That's why from here, from New York, I ask all of the soldiers of the Army of the U.S. not to point their guns at people. Disobey the orders of Trump. Obey the orders of humanity.
After the U.S. revoked Colombian President Petro's visa, Petro wrote online, quote, "Revoking it for denouncing genocide shows the U.S. no longer respects international law," unquote. NBC News is reporting U.S. military officials are drawing up options to possibly launch drone strikes inside Venezuela. In recent weeks, the U.S. has attacked several boats in the Caribbean that officials claimed were carrying drugs. On Friday at the United Nations, Venezuela's foreign minister, Iván Gil Pinto, accused the U.S. of targeting Venezuela in an effort to steal Venezuela's oil and gas.
Hoy, la agresión apunta a Venezuela.
Today, the aggression is aimed at Venezuela, a peaceful and supportive country like Venezuela. It cannot be accused of having weapons of mass destruction or nuclear weapons. Today, the United States invents vulgar and perverse lies that no one believes, neither in the United States nor in the world, to justify an atrocious, extravagant, and immoral military threat. That is why we once again thank world public opinion and that of the United States, the governments and peoples of the world. The denunciation of this attempt to bring war to the Caribbean and South America in order to promote a regime change that would allow them to steal Venezuela's incalculable oil and gas wealth.
The state of Oregon has sued the Trump administration after President Trump directed troops be deployed to Portland, the state's largest city. In a social media post, Trump said the troops are needed to, quote, protect war-ravaged Portland and any of our ICE facilities under siege from attack by Antifa and other domestic terrorists, unquote. Trump added, I am also authorizing full force if necessary, unquote. The Oregon governor, Tina Kotek, denounced Trump's calls for troops.
There is no insurrection. There is no threat to national security, and there is no need for military troops in our major city. We do not need or want federal troops in Oregon stoking fear, creating conflict, and frankly escalating a situation that is under control. Any federal takeover with military troops in our state is a threat to communities across Oregon.
In Chicago, armed federal agents in tactical gear patrolled Chicago's downtown Sunday as the Trump administration escalates its immigration crackdown in Chicago after days of protests at an ICE jail in suburban Broadview, Illinois. On Saturday, agents fired pepper balls at protesters. At least one journalist was among 11 arrested on Saturday. In a statement, officials in Broadview called on ICE to, quote, stop making war on our community, unquote. Meanwhile, in Mexico, a memorial was held on Friday for Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, a father of two who was shot dead by ICE agents in Chicago earlier this month.
We are demanding justice for our friend and neighbor Silverio, for him, and especially for his family, for his children who are now left alone.
In other immigration news, ICE has detained the superintendent of schools in Des Moines, Iowa's largest school district. Ian Roberts had led the school district since 2023. The Department of Homeland Security claims Roberts did not have work authorization. Profiles of Roberts say he was born in the U.S. to immigrant parents from Guyana. New York Mayor Eric Adams announced Sunday he's dropping out of the mayoral race. President Trump and New York business leaders pressured Adams to drop out in order to help disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo beat Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist Assembly member who upset Cuomo in the Democratic mayoral primary in June. Cuomo is now running as an independent. After Headlines will air an exclusive interview with Zohran Mamdani just minutes after he learned that Eric Adams had pulled out yesterday. In Grand Blanc, Michigan, an Iraq war veteran attacked a Mormon church Sunday, killing at least 4 people and injuring 8 others. Authorities say Thomas Sanford rammed his vehicle into the church and began shooting at parishioners. Sanford then set the church on fire. The gunman was then shot dead by officers. Sanford is a former Marine who served 1 combat tour in Iraq. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, an Iraq war veteran has been charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder after he opened fire at a packed waterfront bar in Southport, North Carolina, killing 3 people and injuring 5 others. Nigel Max Edge is accused of firing the shots from a boat. He was later caught by the Coast Guard. He'd served in the Marines from 2000 2003 to 2009 and served 2 tours in Iraq. President Trump confirmed he'll be attending a meeting of the country's top generals and admirals, ordered by War Secretary Pete Hegseth at the Marine Corps base in Quantico, Virginia, scheduled for Tuesday. The orders provided no reason for the unusual and unprecedented event. Eugene Fidel, a military law expert at Yale Law School, told the Washington Post the last-minute meeting, quote, should be tremendously concerning to the American people, unquote. Earlier this year, Hegseth called for a 20% reduction of 4-star generals and fired more than a dozen senior military officials. It comes as the White House has recently renamed the Department of Defense the Department of War. President Trump's expected to meet with 4 top congressional leaders at the White House today to prevent a government shutdown. Congress has until Tuesday to fund the government with a spending measure that would garner 60 votes in the Senate. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries are calling for funding to extend subsidies for the Affordable Care Act and to reverse cuts to Medicaid and other health programs that Republicans recently cut. The Supreme Court ruled Friday to allow the Trump administration to withhold $4 billion in foreign aid that had been approved by Congress. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented, with Justice Elena Kagan writing, quote, "The stakes are high. At issue is the allocation of power between the executive and Congress," unquote. A lawyer who represents the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition, which sued the Trump administration, said the ruling, quote, will also have a grave humanitarian impact on vulnerable communities throughout the world, unquote. Meanwhile, the conservative majority on the court warned their decision is a temporary one and, quote, should not be read as a final determination on the merits. In international news, Russia launched nearly 600 drones and more than 40 cruise missiles at Ukraine, hitting Kyiv and other cities over Saturday night and into Sunday morning. The onslaught killed at least 4 people and wounded at least 70. It comes as Bloomberg reports British, French, and German envoys privately warned Russia that NATO members would shoot down any Russian aircraft violating European airspace. On Saturday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine had received a Patriot defense system from Israel and that 2 more systems would arrive in the fall. The largest indigenous rights organization in Ecuador accused the armed forces of shooting and killing an indigenous community member, Efrain Fuertes, in protests over rising fuel prices in Ecuador. Meanwhile, the Ecuadorian armed forces claim protesters held 17 soldiers hostage. Amazon Watch issued a statement over the, quote, criminalization and harassment of the indigenous movement and social organizations in Ecuador, unquote. Missouri's governor signed into law Sunday a new Trump-backed congressional map designed to flip a seat in Kansas City currently held by Democrats over to the Republicans. The seat is held by Democratic Congressmember Emanuel Cleaver, and the new map reduces the number of black and minority residents in Cleaver's district. At least 3 lawsuits have been filed in Missouri contending the map is illegal since it takes place outside the usual once-in-a-decade cycle for redrawing congressional maps. It comes as Texas approved a new congressional map earlier this year that would flip 5 Democratic-leaning seats. The NFL has announced the Puerto Rican musical superstar Bad Bunny will headline the Super Bowl halftime show. He recently concluded a historic 30-concert residency in San Juan, Puerto Rico, but he's refused to perform anywhere else in the United States because he feared ICE would conduct raids at his performances. And Assata Shakur has died in Havana. She died Thursday at the age of 78. She was a legendary figure within the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army. She was convicted in the May 2nd, 1973 killing of a New Jersey state trooper during a shootout that left one of her fellow activists dead. She was shot twice by police during the incident. In 1979, she managed to escape from jail and later fled to Cuba, where she received political asylum. Assata Shakur long proclaimed her innocence. We'll hear her in her own words later in the broadcast. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. Thanks for watching Democracy Now! On YouTube. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to make sure you never miss a video. And for more of our audience-supported journalism, go to democracynow.org, where you can download our news app, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the daily podcast, and so much more.